All right. Well, hello and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. We are here to make an announcement that really started here in the heart of Tampa Bay. It is dealing with some unscrupulous bad actors and individuals and companies right out of the Tampa Bay area, but this really affects consumers and Floridians statewide. I know there are many of you that have been interested in this action and on this case for a while, and we are so proud of what we have accomplished together. Again, I always want to thank not just investigative reporters and others that are out there with a voice talking about bad actors within some of our businesses in Florida, but the Floridians that will take that next step and make a complaint and speak out when we can see a pattern in practice in scams or deceptive trade practices within Florida. It helps us build the action like we will announce today. Today, I am here with lawyers from our Consumer Protection Division, as well as an affected Floridian. John Altapeter, his wife, is joining us as well. Their lives were disrupted, and certainly we're so proud of him for standing up and speaking out and helping us make this case. But I want to just remind everyone, he is an example, a representative of hundreds of Floridians that have been affected and made complaints. And so today, on their behalf, we are bringing legal action against MC Solar and its 3 owners and those responsible for scamming hundreds of Floridians. Mr. Chopra, Mr. Crowder, and Mr. Amaral, I know, are well known to the Floridians who were induced and scammed into signing very large contracts with work either never performed or largely uncompleted. MC Solar, as you can imagine by that were wanting to save money on electric bills or for other reasons. And our investigation has revealed that the defendants conducted extremely deceptive and unfair trade practices to convince Floridians, a large number of them seniors, some who had difficulty even understanding what they were contracting, to commit to large financing agreements and being responsible and on the hook for large payments for work that was never completed. What these folks did to so many who couldn't even afford in many instances to be out this money. In some instances, when the work wasn't done, they had to pay both the financing payments that they had contracted for and their normal electricity bills. So you can imagine, think of your own household expenses and your electric bills, thinking you're signing a financing agreement to help deal with that, and then you're on the hook for both at the same time. And what was so shocking to the conscience is, in many instances, as people were desperately trying to pay both, at the same time, these bad actors were leaning their homes. So they didn't perform the work. They didn't follow through on what they promised. The homeowners were on the hook for paying these large amounts, and then they would lien their homes at the same time and then try to convince them to sign different financing agreements at a higher rate. I mean, the amount of deceptive and unfair practices that are involved in this case, it's like gremlins. They keep exponentially increasing as we keep finding out more and more information. And so we're so grateful to those like Mr. Altapeter and others who made a claim, gave us information. We know that we have collected more than 400 consumer complaints against this business as we started reaching out and seeking information. And again, I would say many were from senior citizens, persons with disability, military service members, or spouses of those in the military. I want to thank our attorneys. Of course, we have a great consumer protection division. Many came to us out of the private sector because they were called. They wanted to do more. They wanted to help. I will just note our attorney, Tracy Moy, who's here with us. She came to us from the private sector, and she's leading this along with Robert Parker and our chief investigator, Rebecca Wolever. She is our chief investigator, and I know that she has been working diligently and feels personally committed to seeing this case successfully resolved. What these folks did to consumers is just unconscionable. They wanted to try and add value to their homes or simply try and save money. We know that times are tight right now for Floridians, Americans, and something like this is devastating in many households. So MC Solar would strongly entice consumers into solar agreements, and they did this in many ways, whether it's direct calling, whether it was using contacts, but they also went door to door. Speaking from experience with a family member, I have seen what happens when these folks go door to door. They many times knock on seniors' doors. They convince them that they have to do something. The next thing they know, their home is liened. It will not be tolerated in Florida. And if you were ever thinking about doing that and you're watching this, or you are doing that in Florida, you might want to think about moving out of state. Because in addition to this civil action, we're also looking at this criminally. They performed all necessary steps to get the consumers to commit. They enticed them in many ways. They would say that they could get them federal tax incentives. They could guarantee 25-year warranties, wishful financing costs. And once they had that contract in hand, and of course they dedicated lots of resources and personnel and attention to getting the contract signed. And that's about where all that personal attention and resources started falling off. They either flat out did not install the solar systems, or they abandoned the jobs in various stages. If a consumer luckily did get something done and did get the system installed, they might not pass inspection, or they might not be connected to the electrical grid, or one or two panels may work, but they've never fully worked. And some consumers were even left with damaged roofs due to reckless and defective performance. I think you'll hear today about one of those examples where they sent people out to do the preliminary work on the roof, and upon just a cursory examination from a layperson not even trained in roofs, it was obvious that the people that did that had no idea what they were doing in terms of installing the roof. And of course then what started happening, finance payments started and the electrical work wasn't even done. And this happened over and over hundreds of times to Floridians. These folks were promised systems that would be fully operational within weeks or months, and many, like John with me today, are still waiting for a fully operational system. When people started calling, pleading with them, telling them they're paying double bills, many times they wouldn't pick up the phones. One consumer reported waiting 7 hours on a helpline for someone to come on. And many times they started threatening back the consumers with hiring lawyers and threatening action against the consumers who were merely expecting that what they contracted for be performed. It gets worse. The company failed to pay subcontractors, electricians, suppliers. They took the money, got the contract signed. As soon as they did that, they started pulling down on the contracts and paying themselves, family members, living luxury lifestyles, which is what we see in these types of scams. And what was just heartbreaking is when consumers started speaking out and trying to cancel agreements. That's when those actions coming back at them, that aggression, sending demand letters, hiring attorneys, threatening higher invoices, that started coming back on the consumers. So look, I could sit here and list numerous ways in which these scam artists deceive Floridians into signing these contracts. It is abundantly clear that they need to be held accountable. That's why we're here today. Today we'll be filing action against these individuals, 2 of which are felons, 2 of which have already spent time in prison, and we don't want them ever to do business in Florida again. We want to seek retribution and recovery for Floridians, and as well as civil penalties and attorney's fees. This is a company that purported to bring solar systems and help Floridians. And what I'm really proud about this dedicated, diligent team of attorneys and investigators today is it is kind of ironic that you are the ones that were shining lights on this solar company and bringing sunshine to what they were doing. And in the darkest of ways. So I am so grateful to my Consumer Protection Division. Again, grateful to John Altepeter. You'll hear from him in one moment. And let me just finish by saying the only way we can stop these practices is, again, by people bringing it to our attention, filing complaints, so that we can see if this is in fact a company or an individual that's engaged in false and deceptive practices. And if Floridians will do that, it helps us do our jobs better. So if you feel that you have been a victim of a scam, you can report it to your local law enforcement agency. You can also call our office and file a complaint at 1-866-9-NO-SCAM. And so with that, I'm going to bring up Mr. Altepeter to talk about his family's experiences, and then we'll take any questions that you might have.
Good afternoon. My story starts kind of what the AG just said. It was a knock on the door. My wife was home at the time. I was at work, so she told them I'd be home later. They came back. I talked to the gentleman for a while, and then we decided to talk about it another day. And then we had another gentleman knock on the door, different company, and we decided to go with the first guy because they touted that they worked, had deals that they could work with veterans, and I'm a veteran. They said they were veteran owned. I don't know if that's true, but currently my situation is my roof was put on. I had a roof and a solar combined. My roof was put on, and because what I do for a living, I know what to look for. So when it was done, I climbed on the roof. The roof wasn't done. It had spots where water would leak into the home eventually. And then they came back and did that, so it took them 40-something days to do the roof. Once they came and did the solar, they did the solar part, and it's never worked completely since the day they did it. The roof was one thing, but I don't know that much about solar. But what I do for a living helped me research this stuff. So what they sent me, what they were going to send me the first time wasn't the correct stuff. What they sent me the second time was, but it took them a long time. So once the roof was on, the solar payment started. So I didn't even have solar on my house when I started paying. So then I'm paying electric, I'm paying solar, and eventually it got to the point where they got the solar on. They didn't complete the project, so now I'm left with a solar system that only works partially. It's not completed. The software to monitor it, I don't have. The array of the panels on the roof, I don't know which one's which to be able to put it into the software if I get the software. So that's kind of my story.
We'll talk about the lien on your house.
Oh, and yeah, the lien on my house. They canceled my loan and then put a lien on my house. So John Altepeter, last Altepeter.
And what has been your experience when you have reached out to them? Have they just not answered your calls? Or?
There's a lot of that. I actually would do it during the day when I'm at work. I'd go into work and I'd call them at 9 o'clock because their office opened at 9, and I would just leave it on my phone ringing and ringing. And I would, at the end of the day, I would take a photo of it and then hang up. So some of them are 8 hours, some of them are 5 hours. So they wouldn't answer their phone. That was a hard part. It's just getting through to them at all. So.
How do you feel today?
I hope they never practice business in any state. I know a lot about the roofing and the solar. I do that kind of stuff for a living, but a lot of people don't. So that's really why I'm here. So.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's a great, and we so appreciate you sharing your story. Mr. Altepeter, based on his experience and his current work, knew what to look for, and even he fell prey to this scam. And he still doesn't have an operational system. They tried to lien his home. After that, they tried to convince him to sign another financing agreement. And so imagine, we know almost a third of those folks that have been taken advantage of were seniors. And I rattled off for you just some of the more vulnerable groups that don't have the same training, experience, and ability to kind of understand what's happening to them, and it's a real shame. So, I'm so proud of, again, our office, our hardworking attorneys. I'm so proud of those of you that encouraged others to report. It helps us in these investigations when that happens. And anyway, this is a proud day for our office. Obviously, we will also seek a temporary injunction at a future date. Any questions? Other questions?
What do you hope to get out of this civil action? Do you hope to get money back to help make victims whole? And then do you believe crimes have been committed here?
So absolutely. When we bring actions like this, complaints against the individuals and businesses, my primary goal is to shut these businesses down, take away license, make sure they cannot take advantage of other people. We also want to make sure that any money or resources that are available, that we can get those back in terms of compensation to victims that have been harmed. We also want to make sure that we're seeking civil penalties when possible, and stopping the future harm to Floridians. And we will do that through this complaint and through our temporary injunction, and we do that through this civil process. And I previously indicated this, I believe both federally and otherwise, other matters may be still investigated.
It's M as in Mary, C as in cat, solar?
MC Solar, correct.
I wanted to mention, too, we reported about a lot of solar companies, not just this one. I have files on my desk of other solar companies, and the stories all sound the same, just what this consumer was discussing. People show up, they promise things, they don't happen, they end up with liens on their properties. Are you investigating other solar companies, and do you hope that this sends a message to those salesmen?
I can confirm that our office is actively investigating other solar companies. I think with this kind of wave and trend and push to look at solar, anytime there is a new trend, criminals pay attention. Those that want to use deceptive business practice pay attention. And so today's action is obviously pertaining to particular individuals and particular businesses, but I can tell you right now we are actively looking at other solar companies. And I will tell you, my folks work really hard and they are diligent, and they have been instructed that we want to stop bad practices. And again, I will say, as I started off, if you are in the state of Florida and you are looking to hide behind a business to take people's money and use deceptive practices and scam them, you might want to consider moving out of Florida. I have shown time and time again that we will take civil action when necessary, and we will examine whether additional actions need to take place with our federal counterparts.
What's your advice to consumers, because solar is huge right now, who do want these products on their roofs in their homes, to not fall victim to something like this?
So the biggest advice that I could give, and I do give all the time, and whether it is pool companies or whether it is water filtration or whether it is solar, anytime people are coming in with high pressure sales tactics, wanting you to sign right there, if you feel like you are being put on the spot and pressured to sign immediately, if you don't sign immediately, you might not get financing or you might not get the product or service, that is a red flag. You should take the time to read through a contract. You should take the time to consider what and the fine print. I would also say you can always go to the Better Business Bureau, bbb.org, and look to see what other complaints are out there. And if you see a company with a lot of complaints and a very low rating, you really might want to look at that. You might also want to ask the people that are pressuring you to sign or to consider their product or service, do you have references where you've performed work that I could talk to people or see the work you've performed? So important. So, doing that little bit of research, even just searching up the name in the internet of a company or a person that comes to talk to you might provide some information of folks if they've had bad experiences. I know that these consumer websites that are trying to rate businesses, they do try to do a good job of taking in information and sharing that with consumers in Florida. And many times, folks will try and use the name of a business or a company that has a good reputation, and they might alter it just a little bit So pay particular attention to the exact name of the company that's purporting to offer you the goods or services, because sometimes these fly-by-night or high-pressured or deceitful sales folks will use the name of a reputable business and they'll change it ever so slightly. So pay attention to that as well. But be diligent, take your time, and do your research.
I just have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
You said that 2 of them had served time. Do you have their record, what they did serve time for?
One was a Ponzi scheme, one was a scheme involving gold coins, one was an attorney. And so while they were not the licensed contractor that they had partnered with, they had previously been involved in schemes. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.